When you raise a child, you never imagine the day they'll look at you with eyes so empty, so unfamiliar, that even their silence feels like heartbreak. My son Noah had always been gentle, thoughtful, steady, the kind of man who carried kindness quietly. But that evening, when I asked him where his wife Lena was, he hesitated long enough for the air around us to change. "She went home," he said finally, his voice slow, hollow. "But not with me." I was standing by the stove stirring soup, and for a moment I thought I'd misheard him. "Not with you?" I repeated, setting down the spoon. Noah's gaze didn't meet mine. His shoulders sagged under an invisible weight, his eyes ringed with exhaustion. "She said she needed time," he murmured, "so she left." "Left?" I asked carefully. "To where?" He exhaled sharply through his nose, almost as if the question itself hurt. "To her mother's, I think. She didn't say much." I studied him quietly. His hands were clasped together, knuckles pale. "Did something happen?" He shook his head, though the movement was faint, uncertain. "No, nothing." And everything. The words sank like stones into the silence between us. I tried to remember the last time I saw Lena. It had been 2 Sundays ago she'd come over with her usual calm grace. Her hair pulled back, her soft laugh echoing faintly through the house. But now, as I replayed the memory, something felt different. Her smile had been smaller. Her touch on Noah's arm had seemed strained, almost cautious. I hadn't wanted to imagine anything was wrong. But maybe the signs were there all along. "Did you fight?" I asked softly. He stared at the floor. "Not exactly. She just said she couldn't breathe anymore." I froze. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. His jaw clenched, and I saw tears shimmer briefly before he looked away. I wanted to reach out, to hold my son the way I did when he was small and scared, but something about his stillness stopped me. There was a distance in him that I couldn't cross. "She'll come back," I said, though I didn't know if I believed it. "Sometimes people just need time apart to think." Noah's lips tightened. "Maybe, or maybe she's gone for good this time." That night, after he went upstairs, I sat in the quiet of the living room. The clock ticked softly, the streetlights painted long golden lines across the floor. But in the stillness, her name seemed to linger Lena like a whisper that refused to fade. She went home. But not with me. It didn't sound like something said in passing. It sounded like something you say when you've already lost more than words can explain. The next morning, I woke to find the house silent again. Noah's car was gone. The coffee pot sat cold, untouched. I told myself not to worry. He was probably driving, thinking, trying to clear his head. But then, as I passed by his study, I noticed something missing: the wedding photo. For years, it had rested on the middle shelf, Noah in his charcoal suit, Lena in her ivory gown, the two of them caught mid-laughter under a string of lights. They had looked untouchable then, radiant and sure. And now, that memory had vanished from its frame. I tried calling Lena, though I wasn't sure what I'd say if she answered. Her voicemail picked up. "Hi, this is Lena. Leave a message." Her voice sounded distant, cheerful, but not real. I hung up before the beep. By noon, the unease in my chest had grown too heavy to bear. I grabbed my coat and drove across town to her mother's house. When she opened the door, her expression made my breath hitch. "Oh, Helen," she sighed, pressing a hand to her heart. "I was afraid you'd come." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Is Lena here?" She shook her head. "No, she was for a night." Then she left again. "Left?" I repeated. "To where?" "She didn't tell me," her mother whispered. "Just said she needed to get away. From everything." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "And she didn't say anything to Noah?" "She couldn't," Helen murmured. "She said she wasn't ready to face him." I stared at her, struggling to make sense of it. "But they were fine. They were together just last week." Helen's eyes softened, but her voice trembled. "Lena's been trying to hold things together for a long time. But she's been frightened." "Frightened?" I echoed. "Of what?" Helen looked down. "I don't know. She said things felt wrong. That their house didn't feel safe anymore." The word safe made my pulse skip. "What exactly did she mean by that?" Helen's lips pressed together, her eyes avoiding mine. "She didn't explain. Maybe it was just the stress. You know how emotions can twist things." But something in her tone made me wonder if that was really true. I drove home in silence, the world outside blurring into gray and gold. Didn't feel safe. I couldn't stop hearing it. Noah had never been violent, never cruel. But sometimes danger isn't loud. Sometimes it hides behind soft words and kind eyes. When I pulled into the driveway, his car was back. Through the window, I saw him sitting on the couch, motionless. I walked inside slowly, unsure of what to expect. "I went to see Helen," I said quietly. He didn't look at me. "I know." She said, "Lena isn't there." "I know that too." I hesitated. My heart beat loud in my ears. "Then where is she, Noah?" He looked up at me finally, his eyes dull and haunted. That's the question I can't stop asking myself. And then, in a voice barely more than a whisper, he added, "Because she never said goodbye." That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt amplified: the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, the wind brushing against the curtains. I kept hearing Noah's words on repeat. She never said goodbye. Mothers learn to recognize when their children are hiding something. Noah's face had that look, the quiet one he wore as a boy when he'd broken something and didn't know how to admit it. Only this time it wasn't a toy or a rule. It was something much heavier. I found him in the kitchen just before dawn, sitting at the table, staring at his wedding ring. The lights were off, and the gray morning light made his expression look older, almost hollow. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked gently. He didn't answer right away. "I keep thinking about the last thing she said," he murmured. "It didn't sound like a goodbye, but maybe it was." "What did she say?" He rubbed his temples. "She looked at me and she said, 'I can't be who you want me to be anymore.' Then she just left." I waited, hoping he'd say more. But silence filled the space instead. I sat across from him, searching his face. "Noah, did something happen that night?" He shook his head slowly. "Not really. We were quiet most of the evening. She made tea. I watched the news. It was normal," he paused. "Until it wasn't." A shiver traced down my spine. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the table. "She got a phone call." She stepped outside to take it. When she came back, she looked different, scared almost. "She wouldn't tell me who it was." I frowned. "And then she left?" He nodded. "Packed a bag that night. Said she needed to clear her head. It didn't make sense. Lena wasn't impulsive. She was the type to plan, to think before acting. Whatever that phone call was, it had shaken her. After breakfast, I tried calling Helen again, but she didn't pick up. I thought about driving over, but something told me I wouldn't find comfort there either. Instead, I started cleaning the guest room, an old habit whenever worry filled my mind. But as I dusted the nightstand, my hand brushed against something tucked behind a stack of books. It was a folded note. I unfolded it carefully, my heart thudding. The handwriting was neat, deliberate Lena's. "If anything happens to me, please tell my mother I'm sorry." My breath caught. The words were few, but they carried a weight that made my hands tremble. I turned the paper over, but there was nothing else. No date, no signature. Just that single, haunting line. I wanted to rush downstairs and confront Noah, but something in me stopped. What if he didn't know about it? What if it meant something else entirely? I tucked the note into my pocket and sat on the bed, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. My mind ran wild. What could have happened between them? What could make a woman like Lena write something like that? By late afternoon, Noah was outside chopping firewood. The rhythm of the axe striking echoed through the yard, sharp, steady, relentless. He wasn't an angry man, but today there was something in the way he moved that frightened me. I stepped onto the porch. "Noah, can we talk?" He stopped mid-swing, the axe still in the wood. "About what?" "About Lena," he sighed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I've told you everything I know. Have you?" I asked quietly. His eyes flicked toward me, not angry, but defensive. "What are you implying?" I hesitated. "Nothing. I just want to understand what's really going on." He stared at me for a long moment, then dropped the axe and leaned against the fence. "You think I did something, don't you?" "No," I said quickly, though part of me wasn't sure anymore. "I just think you're not telling me everything." He laughed once, dry, empty. "You sound like her." "Lena?" "Yeah, she said the same thing, that I keep things buried. That I wear calm like armor." I didn't respond. He looked toward the trees, voice softening. "I loved her, Mom, I still do. But she stopped looking at me like I was home." Started looking at me like I was a mistake. The words pierced something deep in me. Sometimes love changes, Noah, I whispered. But it doesn't disappear overnight. He didn't answer, just stared into the distance, eyes glazed with something between pain and disbelief. That night, I sat in bed with the note in my hand again. I couldn't sleep without seeing her handwriting, those 8 words that felt like a cry for help. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That my daughter-in-law left and might be in danger because of a note I found hidden in my house? They'd think I was paranoid. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave me. The silence in this house didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like something waiting to be uncovered. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the front door opening. Noah was leaving again, his jacket slung over his shoulder. "Where are you going?" I asked. He didn't look back. "To clear my head." He was gone before I could reply. After he left, I walked into his study again. The missing wedding photo still haunted that empty space on the shelf. But when I opened his desk drawer, I froze. There were printed emails, dozens of them, all from an address I didn't recognize. The subject lines were fragments. "Please don't do this. You promised. I can't keep pretending." And one, near the bottom, dated a week before Lena left. "If you tell her, everything falls apart." My knees weakened. Tell who? About what? I clutched the papers to my chest, my heart hammering. Whatever had happened between Noah and Lena wasn't simple. It wasn't just about space or arguments. There was something darker, something neither of them had said out loud. And as I stood there in the quiet of that room, one thought came to me like a whisper I didn't want to believe. Maybe Lena didn't just leave. Maybe she was running from something. I sat in Noah's study for what felt like hours, surrounded by the faint scent of paper and dust. The morning light slipped through the blinds, casting long stripes across the desk. Across the emails I shouldn't have seen but couldn't ignore. "Please don't do this. You promised. If you tell her, everything falls apart." The words blurred before my eyes. I tried to piece them together like fragments of a confession, but they only deepened the silence inside me. Noah wasn't cruel. I knew that. But sometimes, goodness can hide desperation, and desperation makes people do things they swore they never would. When I heard his car pull into the driveway that evening, I quickly folded the papers and slipped them into my pocket. I didn't want to confront him yet, not until I understood what I was truly accusing him of. He came inside quietly, setting his keys down on the counter. "You're still up," he said. I nodded, studying his face. "Did you find any news about her?" He shook his head. "No, nothing. Did you call her mother?" I tried. No answer. He walked past me toward the sink, running the water. There was something restless in the way he moved, as if he needed to keep doing something to stay calm. "You should eat something," I said softly. "I'm not hungry." The room fell silent except for the sound of the faucet. I hesitated before asking, "Noah, was there someone else?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He froze, hands still under the running water. "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. "Because people don't just walk away from love without a reason." He turned slowly, drying his hands. "No, there was no one else." His voice cracked on the word no, and my heart ached because I didn't know if it broke from truth or from guilt. That night, after he went upstairs, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, trying to steady my thoughts. The stars were faint, the air cool. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. And I thought about Lena, where she might be sleeping, if she was safe, if she was still alive. I took the note from my pocket and read it again. "If anything happens to me, please tell my mother I'm sorry." It wasn't just fear that wrote those words. It was regret. A final plea. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called Helen, and this time she answered. Her voice was shaky. "Margaret," she said, "I was going to call you. Have you heard from Lena?" A long pause. "No, but someone saw her car." My pulse quickened. "Where?" "About 20 miles out, near the old quarry road. It was parked off to the side. They said it looked abandoned." I gripped the phone tighter. "Did they check it?" "They did. The police said it looked like she'd just walked away from it." The doors were locked. Her purse was still inside. The room seemed to tilt around me. "Her purse?" "Yes, but not her phone." I sank onto the chair, my knees weak. "Helen, that doesn't sound right." "I know," she whispered. "They think she just needed to get away. But mothers know when something's wrong, don't we?" I closed my eyes. Yes, I said quietly. We do. After the call, I stared at the wall for a long time. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded note again. I had to make a choice, keep pretending or face the storm that had already begun. By afternoon, I drove to the police station. I told them about the note, about the emails, about her missing phone. The officer listened patiently, scribbling notes, but his eyes told me what his words didn't, that they'd heard stories like this before. Sometimes people just leave, he said kindly. It doesn't mean something happened to her. But she wouldn't leave without telling her mother, I insisted. And she wouldn't leave her purse behind. He sighed, nodding. We'll look into it, ma'am. We'll file a report. I left with a hollow kind of hope, the kind that feels like it's already dying. When I returned home, Noah was in the living room, staring at the TV though it wasn't on. He looked up as I walked in. Where were you? I went to the police, I said simply. His jaw tightened. You what? They need to know she's missing, Noah. This isn't normal. He stood, his voice low but trembling. You shouldn't have done that. Something in his tone sent a chill through me. Why not? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, shaking his head. Because you don't know what you've started. And with that, he walked out of the room, the sound of his footsteps heavy on the stairs. I sat there frozen, replaying his words. You don't know what you've started. That night, I couldn't stay still. I kept thinking about the emails, the car, the note. Every thread pointed to something deeper, something that connected all three. I walked into his study again. Heart pounding, the papers were gone, every last one of them. The drawer where I'd found them was empty. That's when I realized Noah knew I'd seen them, and maybe that's what he meant when he said I didn't know what I'd started. I stood there in the dark, the silence pressing around me, and for the first time since this began, I let the fear fully take hold, because if Lena didn't leave of her own free will, then the truth wasn't out there somewhere waiting to be found. It was right here, in this house. That night, I left the lights on. Every room. It was foolish, maybe, but the darkness felt too alive. Every shadow reminded me of questions I didn't have answers for. Noah hadn't come downstairs again. His door stayed closed, and I told myself he was sleeping. But deep down, I knew neither of us really were. I made tea and sat in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around the mug as if the warmth could steady me. My mind kept circling back to those missing papers, the emails, the note, the locked car, the way he said you don't know what you've started. That wasn't something a frightened man said. It was something a man protecting a secret would. By dawn, I decided to stop waiting. I needed to see for myself what I was too afraid to believe. When I opened Noah's study door again, the air felt colder. The room was neat, unnaturally neat too much so for someone who'd been unraveling. Every paper aligned, every drawer closed. But there was something strange about the carpet near the desk, a faint indentation, like something heavy had been dragged. I knelt, pressing my palm against the floor, then lifted the edge of the rug. Beneath it, there was a wooden hatch I'd never seen before, small, old, the kind built when houses still had secrets. My heart pounded. Noah, I whispered, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. The latch was stiff, but it gave after a few tries. A faint draft rose up, carrying the scent of dust and something else, something metallic, sharp. I reached for my phone's flashlight and pointed it down. The space beneath wasn't deep, just a narrow crawl area lined with boxes. Old storage, maybe? But one box stood out. It wasn't dusty like the rest. It looked new. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Most were of Lena. Some were from before they married, smiling, candid moments, like memories frozen in stillness. But as I flipped through them, my breath caught. The later ones weren't happy. They were distant, taken from angles that felt wrong, snapshots of her walking to her car. Standing by the window, sitting alone in the park, these weren't photos of a wife. They were photos of someone being watched. My stomach turned. Among them, a smaller envelope sat sealed. My name was written on the front in Lena's handwriting. With shaking hands, I opened it. Margaret, if you ever find this, please understand I tried. I loved him once, but he changed. He started keeping things from me. He said he was protecting me, but I began to feel like I was being followed, even inside my own home. If anything happens, please don't let him tell you it was my choice to leave. My vision blurred. The words cut deeper than anything I'd ever read. I sank back against the wall, clutching the letter, my breath shallow. When I finally looked up, I froze. Noah was standing in the doorway. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He just stood there still, quiet, unreadable. "You shouldn't be down here, Mom," he said softly. My throat tightened. Where did these come from? He didn't answer. His eyes flicked toward the open box, then back to me. "I told you to stop digging." I held up the letter. "Lena wrote this." "What did she mean, Noah?" He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "She was sick, Mom. Paranoid. You have to believe me." "Then why were you hiding her pictures?" "I wasn't hiding them. I was keeping them safe. From who?" I whispered. He hesitated. "From herself." Something about the way he said it made my heart ache. He looked so tired, so broken. But there was something else in his eyes, a flicker I couldn't name. I swallowed hard. "Noah, what happened to her?" For a moment, I thought he might finally tell me. His shoulders shook. His mouth opened, then closed again. "She left," he said finally. "That's all you need to know." I stood, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's not true." "You know it's not true." He stared at me, the air between us heavy. Then he whispered, "I was trying to protect her." But she didn't understand. My pulse raced. "Protect her from what?" He looked away. "From herself. From the things she was doing." "What things?" Noah's jaw tightened. "She was talking to someone." "I don't know who, but she was planning to leave me." His voice cracked, and for a second I saw the little boy he used to be, scared, desperate to be loved. "I couldn't let her," he whispered. "I thought if she stayed, she'd remember why she loved me. But then she started to run." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Noah, what did you do?" He stepped back, shaking his head. "You wouldn't understand. I wanted to move toward him, but my legs wouldn't obey." My voice came out thin, trembling. "Noah, please tell me where she is." He looked at me for a long moment, and the silence that followed was worse than any truth he could have spoken. Finally, he said, "You have to stop asking questions. Mom, sometimes love hurts more when you try to save it." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the hatch open, the letter shaking in my hands. I stayed there for a long time, staring down at the photographs scattered across the floor, their edges curling under the weight of truth. The son I thought I knew, the gentle boy who once cried over broken toys, now felt like a stranger. And the woman he claimed had left him? I wasn't sure if she ever truly got the chance. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's face in those photos, smiling once, then fading, then frightened. Her letter burned in my pocket, a ghost whispering from the shadows of my own home. When the sun rose, I brewed coffee just for the sake of motion. Noah hadn't come down yet. His door was still closed. But I heard faint sounds upstairs pacing, the floorboards creaking, the soft thump of drawers opening and closing. He was nervous. He knew I'd seen too much. I needed to act before he did. I took my phone, stepped outside, and dialed Detective Harris, the officer I'd spoken to 2 days earlier. My hands shook as I spoke. "This is Margaret Reeves. We talked about my daughter-in-law, Lena." "Yes, Mrs. Reeves, have you heard from her?" "No," I said, my voice breaking. "But I found something. A letter and photographs. They were hidden in my son's study." There was silence on the other end. "Hidden photographs?" "Yes, of Lena, dozens of them. Some look private. And there was a note from her. She said if anything happened to her, I shouldn't believe she left by choice." I could hear the detective exhale slowly. "Can you bring those items in?" "I can't," I whispered, glancing toward the house. "He'll know. Then keep them somewhere safe. I'll send someone by discreetly this evening." "Please," I said, my voice trembling. "Just find her." "I will," he promised. "But Mrs. Reeves, I need to ask, do you believe your son hurt her?" The question hung between us, heavy and cruel. "I believe," I said softly, "that something happened in my house, and I need the truth, whatever it is." When I hung up, I felt hollow. Like part of me had broken just by saying those words aloud. By afternoon, Noah finally came downstairs. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. "You didn't sleep," he said flatly. "Neither did you," I replied. He studied me for a moment. You've been calling people, haven't you? My throat tightened. What makes you say that? He tilted his head slightly, almost smiling. You never were good at hiding things, Mom. I could say the same about you. His smile faded. You shouldn't have gone through my things. You shouldn't have given me a reason to. He stepped closer, his voice calm, too calm. You think I hurt her? I looked into his eyes. There were no tears there, no rage, just something empty. I think you're hiding something, I said. And I think you're scared of what I'll find. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. There's something you should see, he said. My heart stuttered. What is that? Her phone, he said simply. I found it in the garden 2 days after she left. He led me to the backyard, toward the small tool shed near the fence. My steps faltered as he unlocked the door and motioned inside. There, on the workbench, lay a phone cracked, dusty, the screen dark. I was going to turn it in, Noah said, his voice soft. But then I thought, what if she came back for it? I didn't want anyone misunderstanding. I stared at the phone. You hid it, he looked down. I kept it safe. I picked it up carefully. The case was chipped, the color faded, but it was unmistakably hers, the small charm she'd attached to it, the initials on the back. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because you'd look at me differently, he said. And I can't stand that. I didn't answer. My hands shook as I slipped the phone into my pocket when he turned away. That night, after he went upstairs, I connected it to my laptop. The screen flickered, then came to life. The battery was low, but enough remained. My fingers trembled as I opened her messages. The last one she ever sent was 3 nights before she vanished. It was addressed to a contact saved as A.H. He knows. I think he read my emails. Please don't come to the house. A chill crawled down my spine. I scrolled further. The messages before that painted a clearer picture. Long exchanges, emotional, desperate. Lena had been confiding in someone, a man named Aaron. She wrote about fear, about control, about trying to leave but being watched, and one line stood out like a scar. If I disappear, tell my mother I didn't run. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. Just then, I heard the creak of the hallway floorboards. Noah was awake. I quickly unplugged the phone and tucked it under a stack of papers. My heart raced as I sat back down, pretending to read. The door opened slightly. His shadow fell across the floor. Mom? Yes? Who were you talking to? My voice stayed calm, practiced. Just myself. Old habits, he lingered there, silent, then finally said, You should get some sleep. When he closed the door, I exhaled shakily. Sleep was the last thing on my mind. I stared at the dark screen of the phone, at my own reflection staring back. The truth was starting to show itself piece by piece like shards of glass. But each one cut deeper, and the worst part wasn't what I'd found, it was what I now feared. That the boy I raised might have done something even he couldn't face. I pressed my hands together, whispering to the quiet room, Lena, wherever you are, please let me find you before he does. Detective Harris arrived just before sunset. His car headlights stretched long shadows across the driveway, but he didn't come to the door right away. He waited, watching the house, waiting for my signal. Noah had left earlier that afternoon to run errands. He hadn't said where, and I didn't ask. That gave me just enough time. When I saw Harris through the curtain, I stepped outside quietly, closing the door behind me. He's gone, I whispered. He nodded, his eyes sharp but kind. Do you have the letter? And the phone? I handed him both, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers. I think she was in trouble before she disappeared, I said. And I think Noah knew. He took them carefully, placing each in separate evidence bags. You did the right thing, Mrs. Reeves. We'll get forensics to check the phone. Any idea who A.H. is? I hesitated. Someone she was confiding in. I don't know him, but I think Noah might, his brow furrowed. Why do you say that? Because when I asked about the emails, he didn't seem surprised by the name. The detective nodded slowly, tucking the bag into his jacket. We'll run it through our system. If this A.H. is local, we'll find him. Before he left, he turned to me. You should stay somewhere else tonight. I looked back at the house, the quiet, familiar walls, the porch light flickering faintly. I can't, I said. He'll know something's wrong. Then lock your doors, he said gently. And if he gets agitated, call me immediately. After he drove off, I stood outside for a long while, watching the horizon fade from gold to gray. The house looked ordinary from the outside, peaceful even, but inside, it felt like something was unraveling one thread at a time. When Noah returned later, I forced a calm smile. You were gone a while, I said. Had to clear my head, he muttered, setting down a grocery bag. Thought I'd cook tonight? He hadn't cooked since Lena left. The gesture felt deliberate. We ate in silence. The air between us was thick, fragile. He seemed to be studying me more than eating. Finally, he said, You've been different lately, distant. I've had a lot on my mind. About Lena? About everything, he set his fork down. Mom, he said quietly, you think I hurt her, don't you? The question hit harder than I expected. I think, I said softly, that love can twist into something we don't recognize when we're afraid to lose it. He looked away, jaw tightening. She didn't understand. She thought leaving would fix things, but it wouldn't have. Fix what? He didn't answer, just stared down at his plate, his fingers drumming lightly against the wood. That night, I sat awake, listening for any movement upstairs. My mind wandered through every memory I had of him, his laughter as a child, his first heartbreak, the day he brought Lena home for the first time. She'd looked at him like he was her anchor, steady and sure. What happened to that? What broke them? Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, Detective Harris. We identified A.H. Aaron Hayes. He filed a missing person report for Lena 3 days before you did. I read it twice, my pulse quickening. 3 days before me? Another message followed. He's a former co-worker of your son. They worked together at Sinclair Construction until last year. Records show Aaron was terminated, complaint filed by Noah. I set the phone down, staring into the dark. So Noah and Aaron knew each other. That wasn't coincidence, that was history. And if Lena had been talking to Aaron, then she hadn't just been scared of Noah's silence. She'd been scared of what he might do. I typed a quick reply. Do not call the house. He'll hear. Please keep me updated quietly. The reply came almost instantly. Understood. But Mrs. Reeves, if what we're seeing is right, you might be in danger too. The words made my chest tighten. I looked toward the staircase, silent, shadowed, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw movement at the top. I blinked, but there was nothing there. Still, I locked the bedroom door that night. The next morning, Noah was gone again. His car missing from the driveway. I should have felt relief, but instead there was a strange dread in my gut, as though every moment he was away, something darker was forming out there. By noon, the phone rang. It was Detective Harris again. His tone was different, this time slower, careful. Mrs. Reeves, he said, we've recovered some data from Lena's phone. There are deleted messages, hundreds. Most are between her and Aaron Hayes, but one was sent to your son's number, the night before she disappeared. What did it say? I whispered. He paused. It said, I know what you did, Noah. You can't hide it forever. I felt my knees weaken. My God. There's more, he said. GPS data from that phone places her near the quarry road the night she vanished. But it also shows movement later that night back toward your property. I gripped the counter, my vision blurring. You think she came back here? Or someone brought the phone here afterward, he said quietly. We're working on getting a warrant, but I need you to be careful. If Noah suspects you're talking to us, the line suddenly crackled, then went dead. I froze. The phone was still in my hand, the silence on the other end thick and suffocating. Then, from upstairs, came the faint creak of a floorboard. I turned toward the staircase, my heart pounding. Noah? I called. No answer. The air seemed to still heavy, watchful. And then softly, his voice came from above. Who were you talking to, Mom? His voice drifted down the stairs like a shadow. Calm, almost gentle. Who are you talking to, Mom? My throat tightened. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Just Helen? I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. She wanted to know if we'd heard anything new about Lena. A long silence followed. I could hear his footsteps above me, slow, measured, deliberate. Then the creak of the stairs. Step by step, he came into view. His expression wasn't angry, but it wasn't trusting either. His eyes, those same eyes that once looked at me with warmth, now seemed to study me like I was a puzzle missing its final piece. "You've been calling people," he said quietly. I swallowed hard. "I've been worried." "I told you not to," he said, his tone even. "You're making things worse. For who?" I asked. He stopped mid-step. "For everyone." I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. "Noah, I know about Aaron. I know he worked with you. I know Lena was talking to him." Something flickered across his face shock, quickly buried under composure. "You've been reading her messages?" "I found her phone," I said, voice trembling. "You hid it in the shed." He exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "You shouldn't have done that, Mom." "Neither should you," I whispered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us grew dense, not with anger, but with sorrow. Finally, he said, "You don't understand what she did to me." "What she did to you." He looked up, and for the first time there was pain in his eyes. "She lied, Mom. She made me believe everything was fine. She smiled, she laughed, and all the while she was planning to leave." "With him? With Aaron?" He nodded slowly. "She was going to move away. She was packing when I found out. Said she couldn't keep living a lie." I tried to steady my voice. "What did you do, Noah?" He looked away, his jaw tightening. "I begged her to stay. I told her I could change. But she said she'd already made up her mind." His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "She kept saying I scared her, that I'd been watching her. But I wasn't. I just wanted to make sure she was safe. She was talking to people online, messaging strangers. I couldn't let that happen." His voice cracked then, just a little. "So I followed her, just to know where she was going." My heart sank. "That's not love, Noah. That's fear." He laughed bitterly. "I feared losing her. Isn't that what love is? Fear you'll never be enough?" I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "Love isn't about keeping someone where they don't want to be." He looked at me then, and there was something childlike in his expression, a flash of the boy who once ran to me after nightmares. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." The words froze me. "For what to happen?" He stepped off the last stair, his eyes distant. "That night, she came back. She said she just wanted her things. She said she'd go quietly." I barely breathed. "And?" "She found the photos," he said softly. "The ones I took. She said it was proof I was unstable. She said she'd show them to the police." I felt my pulse quicken. "Noah," she pushed me, he whispered, his eyes glassy. "We were in the kitchen. She said she'd never come back. And I just grabbed her arm. I didn't mean to. I just wanted her to listen." His voice trembled now, each word heavy with guilt. "She fell, Mom. She hit her head on the counter. I tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't move. I covered my mouth, a small broken sound escaping me. She wasn't supposed to die," he said, tears streaming down his face now. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I could barely speak. "Noah, where is she?" He looked at me, and in that look, I saw the truth he'd carried alone. "I took her to the quarry," he whispered. "It was late. I thought no one would ever find her there." My knees gave out, and I sank into the nearest chair, shaking. He stepped closer, kneeling before me. "I didn't mean it, Mom, I swear. I just wanted her to stay. I wanted her to love me again." Tears fell freely down my face. I reached out and touched his cheek, trembling. "Oh, my boy, what have you done?" He closed his eyes, leaning into my hand like he was still that child seeking comfort. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he whispered again. "You believe me, don't you?" I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But belief couldn't undo what he'd said. I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my voice soft. "I believe you didn't mean to, Noah, but we have to tell the police. We have to make it right." He opened his eyes slowly. "No," he said, his tone shifting colder now. "You already did, didn't you?" I froze. He stood, wiping his face, his expression unreadable. "You called them. You told them about the phone, the letter. You've been talking to them behind my back." I couldn't lie anymore. I had to. For a long, terrible moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "I thought you'd understand." He turned and walked toward the back door, the night wind rushing in as he stepped outside. "Noah." Wait, but he didn't. The last thing I heard was the sound of the car starting. Tires screeching against gravel, disappearing into the distance. and I sat there, clutching the silence he left behind, the kind that breaks you more than any scream ever could. The night after Noah left, the house felt colder than it ever had before. I sat by the window until morning, listening to the hum of distant cars, praying that one of them wasn't his. Every sound made me flinch, the creak of wood, the sigh of wind through the cracks. But it wasn't fear that kept me awake. It was the image of my son, broken and lost, confessing to something he could never undo. By dawn, I called Detective Harris. My voice was calm, though my hands trembled. "He told me," I said quietly. "He told me what happened." The line went silent for a long moment. "Where is he now?" "I don't know," I whispered. "He left last night. Mrs. Reeves, I need you to stay inside. Officers are already on their way. We'll find him." But I wasn't thinking about safety. I was thinking about Lena, about that last night in my kitchen, about the fear that must have filled her final breath. When the police arrived, I handed them everything: the letter, the phone, the photographs, and the words that had been echoing in my mind all night. They moved through the house quietly, respectfully, though their presence made the truth feel more real, like grief had finally taken physical form. Detective Harris sat across from me at the table. "You did the right thing," he said gently. "No," I murmured, staring at the cold mug in front of me. "The right thing would have been to see the signs sooner." He didn't argue. Maybe because he knew I was right. Around noon, an officer entered the kitchen and whispered something to Harris. His expression darkened. "We found his car," he said finally. My heart stilled. "Where?" "Near the quarry road." I closed my eyes, the breath leaving my chest in a slow, painful sigh. "He went back," Harris nodded. "We're sending a search team now. I'll keep you updated as soon as we know more." When they left, the silence returned, heavier this time, as if the house itself was grieving. I walked through each room, touching the edges of furniture, the framed photos, the ghosts of laughter still clinging to the walls. In the living room, our family portrait hung crooked. I reached to straighten it and stopped. Behind the frame, something small slipped out, a folded piece of paper taped to the back. I opened it carefully. It was a note written in Noah's handwriting. "Mom, if you ever read this, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't mean to hurt you. I can't undo what happened, but maybe I can make it stop hurting. I'm going where she is now. Don't try to find me." The room tilted. My knees gave out and I dropped to the floor, the note still clutched in my hands. "Noah," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "No." Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance, faint, growing louder. I ran to the porch, the wind biting at my face as Detective Harris's car came speeding down the street. He stepped out, his expression grave. "Mrs. Reeves," he said softly. "We found him." I couldn't speak. My lips moved, but no sound came. "He was at the quarry," he continued, his voice steady but low. "There's a cabin down by the edge. He was inside. We believe he took his own life sometime early this morning." The world went quiet. I remember the feeling, not shock, not even sorrow, just emptiness. Like something inside me had finally gone still after days of trembling. They found Lena too. Buried near the tree line behind that same cabin. I didn't go there. I couldn't. Days blurred together after that. The funeral came and went, one for Lena, one for Noah. The same faces appeared at both, wearing the same hollow expressions, whispering the same words that never make grief lighter. Such a tragedy. So young. At least they're at peace now. But peace wasn't the word that lived in me. It was something else, something quiet and cold, like the air before a storm. Helen sat beside me at the second service. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she reached for my hand and whispered, "I don't blame you. I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't, because deep down I knew she should. I had raised him. I had seen the cracks before they became fractures, the way he needed control, the way he mistook silence for strength. I told myself he was fine, that all he needed was time. I never realized that time was the very thing running out. After the funerals, the house went quiet again. The officers were gone, the neighbors stopped visiting, and the sound of Noah's footsteps would never echo down the stairs again. I packed away the photographs, all except one. The wedding picture. I set it back on the shelf, right where it had always been. Only now it was different. The smiles looked softer, almost sorrowful, as if they'd always known how this story would end. Sometimes, I still hear his voice. In the quiet moments, when the kettle hums and the evening light turns gold, I hear him say, "She went home, but not with me." And I finally understand. He wasn't just talking about Lena that night. He was talking about himself, about the part of him that had already let go, long before his body followed. I visit the quarry sometimes. There's a bench there now, overlooking the water. The wind is gentle, the light soft. Two names carved into the wood: Noah Reeves and Lena Reeves, side by side. People call it tragic love. I call it what it is, a story of two hearts that couldn't find their way back, and one mother who will never stop asking the question that began it all. Where did she go? It's been 6 months since the funerals, 6 months since the house stopped sounding like home. I've tried to rebuild routines: morning coffee, evening walks, tending to the small garden behind the porch. But grief has a way of slipping between moments. Some days it feels softer, almost manageable. Other days it feels like I'm still sitting in that kitchen, listening to Noah's voice say the words that unraveled everything. The police closed the case after a few weeks. The coroner's report called it a tragic domestic incident followed by self-inflicted harm. Detective Harris came by once more to check in, his voice quiet, his eyes tired. "I'm sorry." "Mrs. Reeves," he said, "we did everything we could." I believed him. Or at least I tried to. After that, I stopped answering calls from reporters. I stopped reading the articles. I couldn't bear to see their names printed side by side again: Noah and Lena Reeves. A marriage that ended in tragedy. What they never wrote about was the silence left behind, the echo of footsteps that would never return, the meals that went cold waiting for voices that had gone still. One evening, I sat by the window watching the sunset. The light spilled across the floor in that same golden hue I used to love. It reminded me of them, of the warmth that once filled this house before it all went wrong. That's when I noticed the envelope. It had been slipped under my front door, unmarked. No name, no address. Just a plain cream envelope, thin enough to tremble when I picked it up. Inside was a single piece of paper, no words, just a photograph. Lena, standing by a pier. Hair loose, wind in her face. She looked alive. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't an old photo, I could tell. Her hair was shorter. The necklace she wore was the one she'd bought a month before she disappeared, the same one that hadn't been found among her belongings. My hands shook. I turned the photo over. There, in faint handwriting, were 3 words. "I forgive him." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I looked again, searching for proof that it was a hoax, a sign that someone was playing a cruel trick. But everything about it felt real. The paper, the ink, the small fingerprint smudge near the edge. I called Detective Harris immediately. He arrived within the hour, his face unreadable as I handed him the envelope. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "I don't know," I whispered. "It was under the door when I came downstairs." He studied the photo carefully, then looked at me. "You said her necklace wasn't recovered?" I nodded. "It wasn't with her or her belongings," he exhaled slowly. "Mrs. Reeves, this could be a forgery, or a staged photo. People try to comfort families this way or exploit them. But what if it's not?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What if she's alive?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "We'll have it analyzed. But I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that it's not what it looks like." When he left, I sat in the quiet again, the photo still in my hands. I traced the edge of it gently, my heart torn between grief and something dangerous hope. That night, I dreamt of her. Lena, standing in the garden, smiling softly. She didn't speak, but when she turned, I saw Noah behind her, reaching for her hand. For a moment, they looked peaceful together somehow. Then she faded, leaving only him, standing in the shadows, watching me. I woke with tears on my cheeks. 2 days later, Detective Harris called. His voice was steady but low. "We analyzed the photo. It's recent. Less than 2 months old." My breath hitched. "Then it's real?" "Maybe. But here's the strange part: it was printed at a small shop 2 towns over. Paid in cash. No fingerprints except yours. Do you think she's alive?" I whispered. "We can't confirm that," he said carefully. "But if she is, it means someone helped her disappear. Someone who knew how to keep her hidden." I sank into the chair, my pulse racing. "What about the body you found?" He hesitated. We're running another test. The remains were too decomposed for a perfect match, but the evidence was compelling. Still, the dental records might have been wrong. It happens. I pressed a hand to my chest, tears welling again. If she's alive, if she forgave him, he paused. Then maybe she's trying to tell you something. After he hung up, I sat there in silence, the words echoing in my mind. Maybe she's trying to tell me something. I looked again at the photo. The pier behind her stretched out over still, gray water, and in the distance, just visible, a small sign. I held it closer to the light. The letters were faint, but legible enough to make out the name. Port Haven. I knew that place. A quiet coastal town 2 hours north, Noah's favorite getaway when he was younger. He and Lena had gone there once, early in their marriage. She'd loved it. It couldn't be coincidence. I folded the photo carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in my purse. My hands still shook, but my resolve was clear. Tomorrow, I'd go there, if Lena was alive. I needed to see her even just once to understand why she came back only through a photograph, and if she wasn't, then maybe the person who sent it was trying to tell me the truth Noah couldn't. The road to Port Haven curved through fields and forests, the world growing quieter the farther I drove. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving, not even Detective Harris. Part of me knew it was reckless, but another part, the mother in me, couldn't stay still. The envelope lay on the passenger seat beside me. Every so often, I glanced at the photograph again. Lena's hair lifted by the wind, that faint, distant pier. I forgive him. Forgiveness. Such a gentle word to carry such unbearable weight. The town appeared like a secret small cottages with fading paint, gulls circling above the gray harbor, and water stretching out like a mirror to the sky. The air smelled of salt and rain. I parked by the shore and walked toward the pier in the photograph. The boards creaked softly beneath my shoes, and for a moment, I could almost hear her laughter again, light and fragile, like sea glass clinking together. A woman stood at the end of the pier, her back to me, a scarf blowing in the wind. My heart stopped. Lena? She turned, but it wasn't her. The woman was younger, a tourist maybe, her expression curious but kind. Sorry, she said, smiling faintly. Did you call me? I managed a weak nod and turned away, embarrassment flooding through me. I sat on a nearby bench, the envelope clutched in my lap. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe grief had turned me into someone who mistook hope for signs. But then, as I sat there, an old man sweeping the boardwalk glanced my way. You looking for someone, ma'am? I hesitated. Maybe. Have you ever seen this woman? I handed him the photograph. He squinted at it, adjusting his cap. Ain't sure, though. That looks like the lady who comes by the market on Thursdays. Buys flowers from Ellie's stall? My pulse quickened. When's the market? He pointed toward the hill, up by the church square. You can't miss it. It's Thursday today, if that's what you're asking. I thanked him and started walking, my heart thudding with every step. The market was small. Just a handful of vendors selling fruit, crafts, and flowers under faded tents. I scanned every face, every figure with dark hair, every soft smile that resembled hers. At one of the stalls, an older woman arranging tulips looked up. You looking for something in particular, dear? I hesitated. Actually, someone, a woman. About 30, light brown hair, wears a silver locket. Her expression shifted slightly. You mean Anna? Anna? Sweet girl. Comes here every week. Quiet. Always buys white lilies. My breath caught. Do you know where she lives? The woman's gaze softened. Out past the harbor road near the cliffs. Small cottage with blue shutters. Why is she family? I hesitated, my voice barely a whisper. You could say that. I thanked her and followed the winding road past the harbor. The cliffs rose higher here, the sound of waves crashing far below. My hands trembled as I approached the cottage, small, simple, with a white fence and a patch of overgrown lavender. The door was painted the same shade of blue Lena once said reminded her of peace. I knocked once. Then again. No answer. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw it through the small window beside the door. On the kitchen counter sat a vase of fresh white lilies. I froze. Before I could think. The door creaked open. A woman stood there, her eyes widening in shock. It was her, Lena, alive. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt unreal, the sound of the sea, the flutter of curtains, the sharp edge of disbelief cutting through it all. Finally, she whispered, "Margaret." My knees nearly gave out. "You're alive." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "I didn't think you'd find me." Tears spilled down my face. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come home?" Her expression trembled, not guilt, but sorrow. "Because I couldn't. Not after what happened." I stepped closer. "They said you were dead, Lena. They said Noah." She looked away, pain flashing across her face. "He didn't mean to hurt me." I froze. "You remember?" She nodded. "I woke up after he thought I was gone. He panicked, Margaret. He was crying. I could hear him. I was too weak to move, and when he left, I ran. My breath caught." "You ran?" "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "I was afraid the police would think I was part of it, that I'd driven him to it. So I changed my name. Started over." I covered my mouth, tears spilling freely now. "He thought he'd killed you." He carried that guilt until the end. Lena's face crumpled, and she sank onto a chair, her hands shaking. "I know. I saw his obituary." For a long moment, there was only silence, the sound of the ocean outside, the ache of everything unsaid pressing between us. "I sent you the photo," she said finally. "I needed you to know I was safe, and that I forgave him." I sat across from her, still trying to breathe. "Why tell me now?" She met my eyes. "Because I can't keep hiding. And because you deserve to know the truth about that night, about him, about me." My heart pounded. "The truth?" Lena nodded slowly. "Noah didn't hurt me out of anger. He was protecting me. From someone else." I stared at her, speechless. "From who?" Her voice broke. "From Aaron." For a long time after she said his name, I couldn't speak. The sound of it, Aaron, carried too much history. Too much weight. Lena looked down, her fingers tightening around her cup of tea. "You think you know what happened that night?" she said softly. "But you don't. Neither did Noah." I leaned forward, my voice trembling. "Tell me," she took a deep breath. "Aaron and I met at work. He was charming, kind. At first, he was just a friend, someone I could talk to. But then he started to say things about Noah. How controlling he seemed, how quiet people like him often hid darker sides. I didn't want to believe him, but he was always there when Noah was distant. Always saying just the right thing to make me doubt." Her eyes flickered up to mine, glassy with guilt. "And I let him," I said nothing. I could hear only the faint rush of the waves outside and the small shaking sound of her breath. "One night," she continued, "I found out Aaron had been fired. Noah said he'd caught him embezzling money from the company. When I asked Aaron about it, he said it was Noah's doing, that Noah framed him to keep me away." Her voice broke. I was so confused and scared. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Then the messages started. "Messages?" She nodded. "At first, they were from unknown numbers, little threats, nothing specific. Then Aaron said he thought Noah had found out about us." I blinked. "About you?" Her lips trembled. "We'd gotten too close. It wasn't an affair, not really. But there were feelings. Things I shouldn't have said. Things I can't take back." I felt my heart sink. "Did Noah know?" She nodded faintly. "I think so. That night when I got the call, I thought it was from Aaron." I stepped outside to answer, and I heard his voice, angry, panicked. "He said he was coming over. That he had proof Noah had ruined him." My pulse quickened. "And then?" "When I went back inside, Noah was waiting. He'd seen my phone. The messages. He wasn't yelling, he never yelled, but there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. A kind of heartbreak that doesn't have words." Her voice trembled as she went on. "He said, 'You brought him into our home.' I told him I didn't mean to, but he didn't believe me. Then we heard a noise outside the gate. Someone was there." I held my breath. "Aaron?" She nodded slowly. "He came in through the side door. I didn't know what to do. They started arguing, shouting things I couldn't understand. Noah kept saying, 'You lied to me,' and Aaron kept saying, 'You made me lose everything.'" Her eyes grew distant, haunted. Then Noah pushed him. Not hard, but enough. Aaron fell, hit his head on the edge of the counter. It was so fast, so quiet afterward. He wasn't moving. My blood ran cold. "My God! Noah told me to go upstairs," she whispered. "He said he'd fix it. That no one would ever have to know. I was shaking, but I did as he said. When I came down, Aaron was gone. Noah told me to pack a bag, said I needed to leave for a few days, that he'd tell the police I ran away after a fight. I could barely breathe. But you didn't leave. I tried, she said. I drove for hours, but the guilt, it was unbearable. I turned back that night. When I came home, Noah was sitting on the floor crying. He kept saying, I fixed it. You're safe now. I didn't understand what he meant until later. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He buried Aaron near the quarry. That's what I think the police found. It wasn't me they found, Margaret. It was him. I felt my stomach twist. The truth, hideous and hollow, began to settle into shape. That's why you ran, I said quietly. She nodded. I was terrified. I didn't know what Noah would do next. He wasn't violent, not in the way people think. But he wasn't himself anymore. He kept saying I had to stay quiet, that everything he'd done was to protect me. But I couldn't live with it. I couldn't live in that house anymore. Tears welled in her eyes. I left while he slept. I drove until I couldn't drive anymore. I changed my name. Started over. But every day, I wondered if he'd find me or if the police would. And when I saw the news, that he'd taken his life, her voice broke completely. I realized he believed he'd killed me. I sat there frozen, my hands trembling. The grief I'd carried for my son twisted into something heavier, something like pity and horror entwined. Lena, I whispered, why tell me now? Why send the photo? She looked at me, her face streaked with tears. Because I can't carry it anymore. Because I want you to know he wasn't a monster. He was a man who loved too much, who made one terrible choice and couldn't forgive himself for it. Her words sank deep into the hollow space in my chest. Outside, the waves hit the cliffs again and again. Relentless and soft, the sound of time refusing to stop. I reached for her hand. You need to tell the police. They have to know the truth, she shook her head. I can't. It's too late for Noah, and it's too late for Aaron. The only thing left is to live. I stared at her, my heart aching. And me? What do I do with all this? She squeezed my hand gently. You do what mothers always do, Margaret. You forgive, even when it breaks you. The light outside was fading now, turning the sea silver and gray. In it, I could almost see them, my son and his wife, not as victims or ghosts, but as two people who lost their way in love's long shadow. For the first time in months, I didn't cry. I just sat there, holding Lena's hand, listening to the quiet truth settle like the tide coming home. The morning after Lena told me everything, the sea was calmer, a gray sheet stretched beneath a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain or shine. I stood outside her cottage, breathing in the salt air, feeling both heavier and lighter than I had in months. Inside, Lena moved quietly, her motions careful, as if each sound might stir ghosts. She poured coffee for both of us, and we sat across from each other without speaking for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was soft. I thought telling you would make me feel free, she said. But I don't know if I feel anything now. That's what truth does sometimes, I said. It doesn't always free us. It just settles inside us. She nodded, her eyes rimmed red. I can still see his face. That look when he realized what he'd done. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was love, twisted into something it was never meant to be. I swallowed hard. He loved you in a way that hurt you both. She met my gaze. You raised him to love deeply. I don't blame you for that. But I did. I blamed myself every time I looked into her eyes and saw the pieces of my son's broken heart reflected back. After breakfast, we drove into town together. I hadn't told her yet, but I planned to speak with Detective Harris. I couldn't keep the truth buried, not again. But before I could bring it up, Lena said quietly, You want to tell them, don't you? Yes. I figured. She looked out the window, her face unreadable. You should. I hesitated. Will you come with me? She shook her head. I can't. I need to stay who I am now. Anna, not Lena Reeves. If I go back, they'll make me relive it, the investigation, the cameras, the whispers. I can't survive that again. Her voice broke slightly. Please, Margaret. Let me keep what little peace I've found. I looked at her, this woman who had lost her husband, her name, her entire self, and I knew I couldn't ask her for more. All right, I said softly, but I'll tell them enough. Enough for them to know he wasn't the monster they thought. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Detective Harris was waiting at the station when I arrived. His face showed a quiet surprise when he saw me alone. I thought you might come, he said, leading me into his office. We've been reviewing the case since the new evidence surfaced, the photo, the timing. Something didn't add up. I nodded, sitting across from him. I have the rest of the story. He listened as I spoke everything Lena had told me, everything Noah had confessed, the truth about Aaron Hayes. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, the silence between us felt like an exhale after months of holding breath. Finally, he said, it explains a lot. The inconsistencies in the autopsy, the missing jewelry, the messages, everything. She's alive, I said quietly. He nodded. We'll close the case as unresolved officially, but you know I'll have to make a report. I know. He leaned back, studying me. You realize, Mrs. Reeves, that what you're doing protecting her could be seen as obstruction. I met his eyes. And what would you do, detective, if it were your son who died thinking he'd done the unforgivable? If the woman who could save his name was standing right in front of you just trying to live? He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, I'd probably do the same thing you're doing. He reached for a pen, then paused. I'll mark it as closed for now. You should go home, Margaret. Home. The word didn't mean what it used to, but I thanked him and left anyway. Outside, the air was cool and clean. I drove back to the cliffs to Lena's cottage. She was standing by the fence, staring out at the sea. When she saw me, she smiled faintly, a fragile, tired smile that looked more like a prayer than joy. Did you tell him? I did. And? They'll close it quietly, I said. No questions, no press. She nodded. Good. I looked at her for a long moment. What will you do now? She thought for a moment. Maybe stay. Maybe move again. I'm not sure. But I'll send you a letter when I figure it out. Promise? She smiled. Promise. Before I left, I hugged her, and this time she didn't hold back. We stood there in the salt wind, two women bound not by blood, but by the same tragedy. When I finally pulled away, she said softly, He loved you so much, Margaret. Even when he was lost, he never stopped loving you. I nodded, tears spilling freely. And I'll never stop loving him. She reached into her pocket and pressed something into my hand, a silver locket. I think he'd want you to have this. I opened it when I got to the car. Inside was a tiny photo Noah and Lena on their wedding day. Their smiles were soft, uncertain, but real. That night, back home, I placed the locket on the mantel beside his photo. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It just felt quiet, not empty, not heavy, just quiet. And I think that's what forgiveness really sounds like. It's been nearly a year now. The seasons have come and gone, and with them, the sharp edges of grief have softened into something quieter. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of understanding. The garden blooms again. The air smells of earth and new beginnings. Sometimes I still catch myself listening for Noah's footsteps in the hallway. I still set out 2 cups when I make tea. Habits die slowly when they were born of love. Lena, or Anna, as she's known now, kept her promise. A letter arrived last week, postmarked from a small coastal town farther north. The envelope was simple, the handwriting careful. I sat by the window before opening it, letting the sunlight spill across the paper, as if warming what her words might carry. Dear Margaret, I hope the sea by your home is gentle these days. Mine is quieter than before. I think of you often, especially in the mornings when the light comes through the curtains just right, and I remember how it looked in your kitchen that first time I visited. I've started working at the local library. It's peaceful here. I grow flowers by the windowsill, white lilies, always. Some people ask why I only choose those, and I tell them they remind me of forgiveness. Not for him, not for myself, but for the way life continues even after everything breaks. You were right, Margaret. The truth didn't free me. It didn't fix anything. But it gave me the chance to start again, to live without fear. I think that's what Noah would have wanted, for both of us to find peace, however far apart we had to go to find it. Sometimes I dream of him not the way he was at the end, but the way he looked when he smiled. I hope you see him that way too. With love, always. Lena. When I finished reading, I pressed the letter to my chest. For the first time in a long while, I felt something bloom in the hollow place grief had lived a small, steady warmth that didn't ask for anything but to exist. Outside, the sky was blushing with the last light of day. I walked out to the garden, where the wind carried the scent of rain. I knelt by the lilies, brushing my fingers over their petals. I hope you found her, I whispered. And I hope she forgave you. Somewhere in that stillness, I could almost hear them, his soft laugh, her quiet voice carried together on the wind, and for the first time since he said those words, she went home, but not with me. I finally understood. Home wasn't a place. It was peace, and at last they'd both found theirs.